Hi, my name is Kelly Herman, and I am presenting on Dr. Ruth Ann Rehfeldt, who has a PhD from the University of Nevada from the Behavior Analysis Program in Psychology, which is also where she received her master's degree. Dr. Rehfeldt is also a recognized board-certified behavior analyst at the doctoral level. Currently, Dr. Rehfeldt is a professor at Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, where she's also a member of the Neuroscience Research Center. Dr. Rehfeldt is currently researching. Uh, she focuses on derived stimulus relations, which I will get into soon. And she also is teaching. She teaches introductory level courses to ABA. She teaches about instructional best practices, assessment strategies, um, and also deeper level courses into BCBA. She focuses on learners with autism and other developmental disabilities in her research. Oftentimes, she will have students with recognized delays or difficulties in education and also reviews studies with students in that category. However, her research has focused mostly on autism and developmental disabilities and trying to derive verbal responses from her participants. A lot of the contributions Dr. Rehfeldt has made has been on derived relational stimuli. Um, these derived relational stimuli she has used to elicit a verbal response, and she's ended up finding a instructional best practices for learners with autism and other developmental disabilities that struggle with communication. Something that I found really interesting is how a lot of her studies and articles talk about tact and match to sample instruction to be stronger and to yield better results than stimulus control in young students with autism. Something to note is that she does not just focus on young students, age 10 or below. She also works with adults and adolescents. She does not really discriminate with age group, and she has used a lot of the research that she has done to find um, age appropriate implications for her studies. The implications for some of the work that Dr. Rehfeldt has found is that combinations of verbal and visual stimuli are most effective to elicit a spoken response. Um, she also has done a lot of research on the idea of equivalence and how it can be used for age appropriate manding. And one of the chapters that Dr. Rehfeldt has authored, she discusses how learners associate images with text, or a text sample and a visual sample of the same idea. So if I were to hold up an image of a cat and a text card that spells out cat, they are the same thing. And if I use one to demand to hold the cat, then if that behavior is reinforced, then they are equivalent, and eventually fading the instruction to focus on the text as an age appropriate use of that demand for an adult. She gives a lot of instructional techniques about match to sample instruction and tactile instruction, and what that could mean and what does mastery look like. I found that in one of her studies as well, she discusses how it took 127 trials for one of the participants to show mastery on a match to sample instructional technique on the use of categories. Um, she does use a lot of match to sample items to and categorization in her instruction, and has found that, again, visual stimuli such as images or text combined with the verbal instruction and verbal usage has shown the most responses. If I were to interview Dr. Rayfeld, I would have a lot of questions, and I would be very curious to find out first why she wants to focus on why she has decided to focus on learners with autism and intellectual disabilities. There are so many exceptionality classifications and categories, and I'm just curious as to what has led her to this population. Um, I would like to know how she uses these concepts of ABA in her research beyond just stimulus control in her experiments. I would like to know, has she found any of these practices to be effective in working with clients? Does she continue to work with clients? And does she use it to elicit verbal responses? I also would like to know why she's focusing on eliciting verbal responses rather than other response classes. Why is she focusing on this type of response instead of diminishing or trying to decrease aggressive responses or inappropriate responses instead of reinforcing verbal responses? I think this is really important work because she is allowing people to have their voice and use their voice in an appropriate way and is reinforcing that. And I would like to know more about how she came to that. I'd also want to know what she has found most surprising in her research on instructional practices. In a lot of the introductions to her articles, she discusses how um, the findings are surprising because they go against what was previously thought in the field of applied behavior analysis, and especially with match to sample instruction and how to use derived contingencies to help shape the instruction rather than what had previously been taught. These are the resources that I have used in my research. I used 3 articles and a book chapter. Um, one book was Derived Relational Responding: Applications for Learners with Autism and Other Developmental Disabilities. Dr. Rayfeld co-authored chapter 11 in this book. Emergent intraverbal responses via tact and match to sample instruction. This article was the one where I found the research on. It took 127 trials to demonstrate mastery and 2 students. One learned a little bit quicker, but they both needed match the sample instruction in categories. Um, Toward a technology of derived stimulus relations and analysis of articles published in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. Dr. Rayfeld had reviewed several articles, had come up with some charts in their findings, and then discussed how this derived stimulus relations is stronger than stimulus control, and that the research is promising but still has room for more. And then effects of dictation taking and match the sample training on listing and spelling responses in adults with intellectual disabilities. This article built off of the chapter in the first source on how to use age appropriate responses and match to sample training. Thank you for listening to my presentation on Dr. Anne Rayfeld, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.